தமிழில் சிறந்த பேச்சாளர்கள் இங்கே இருக்காங்க. நான் அதிகமாக அதில் பேச வேண்டிய தேவையில்லை. உங்கள் அனுமதியுடன் ஆங்கிலத்தில் சில வார்த்தை பேச கேட்கிறேன். மாமனிதர் நேரு என்பது பொருத்தமான டைட்டில். Because Jawaharlal Nehru was not only the first but the greatest Prime Minister of India. Not just the greatest Prime Minister of India, but the greatest Prime Minister of India by an incalculable distance. Nobody can come close to Pandit Nehru in terms of overall contribution, life, work and contribution to the nation and the people of India. இதை elaborate பண்ண தேவையில்லை. For 16 years at the head of the government, 14 of them in Republican India after the constitution was adopted, was promulgated. அவரை பற்றி there are several books including biographies have been brought out about Pandit Nehru. Michael Breacher, various others, even Sashi Tharoor has brought out a book recently. But the classic work, the most authoritative work, because he had access to the full primary documents, was by the historian Sarvapalli Gopal, his 3-volume biography of Jawaharlal Nehru. And Gopal, in the preface to the first volume, presents the greatness of the man in the following terms. The decisive role he played in the history of the 20th century. வெறும் இந்தியாவில் மட்டுமல்ல, உலகத்திலே ஒரு 20ஆம் நூற்றாண்டில் decisive role he played in the history of the 20th century. As a leader of the Indian people, as a representative of the new mood in Asia. ஏஷியாவில் ஒரு புதிய நியூ மூட் ஏற்பட்டதில் ஒரு முக்கியமான அவருக்கு பங்கு அதில் உண்டு. அது ரெப்ரசன்டேட்டிவ். அண்ட் as a spokesman of the international conscience, ஒரு political morality அவருக்கு உண்டு. As a spokesman of the international அப்படின்னு சொல்லி Gopal presents the different aspects and gifts of Jawaharlal Nehru. As an anti-colonial fighter first, the book deals with it very well. We must now highlight the fact that Nehru was one of the first Congress leaders to demand that the Congress party should resolve to make a complete and explicit break from all ties with British imperialism and the British Empire. And there was opposition to this course at various stages as the freedom movement reached its culmination, reached its peak. This is, I think, a very important contribution. The clarity with which he said India must be completely free from the British Empire. Of course, you can be a member of the Commonwealth on a new basis, the basis of independence, but you cannot be a part of that empire. You must break completely free from that. He deserves tremendous credit for that. There are other leaders, including those progressive congresspersons and those on the left and so on, but to him belongs this distinction. Jawaharlal Nehru was also Mahatma Gandhi's political heir, and on January 15, 1941, Gandhiji stated, and I quote, "Some say Jawaharlal and I were estranged." சில பேர் சொல்றாங்க ஜவஹர்லால் நேருக்கும் எனக்கும் ஒரு மோசமான உறவு ஏற்பட்டது, we have fallen out என்று. It all requires much more than a difference of opinion to estrange us. We had differences from the time we became co-workers, and yet I have said for some years, and say so now is 1941, that not Rajaji but Jawaharlal will be my successor. Jawaharlal Nehru was also a steadfast Republican, opposed to princely states, their privileges, the ways of the princes, the way they exploited the common people, and the way they used their armed forces and militias. And this deserves as much credit for the abolition of this highly negative feature of pre-independent India as anyone else, as Sardar Patel, B.P. Menon and anyone else. Jawaharlal Nehru was very clear on that. He had many-sided gifts. as a barrister, as a lawmaker, as a journalist, as a writer of important works, letters from her father to his daughter, an autobiography, The Discovery of India, and many people haven't yet read his letters to chief ministers, which have been collected and brought out, which deal with a number of issues that came up in independent India. And Jawaharlal Nehru's address following the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, his Tryst with Destiny speech, these will go down as history as some of the greatest speeches made by anyone in the world. I think enough has been said about his commitment to secularism. But what needs to be said is, he faced a lot of opposition even in those days, even from within the Congress party. And Jawaharlal Nehru stood apart. Of course, Gandhiji was a great champion of Hindu-Muslim unity. They spoke different languages. Jawaharlal Nehru is not an atheist, an agnostic. Gandhiji was a devout Hindu, committed to good relations with minorities, with Muslims in particular. He also admired many principles of Christianity, but they were one in upholding secular values. But Jawaharlal Nehru was extremely clear about it. Also, in championing other democratic rights, freedom of speech and expression, freedom of association, equality before the law for every individual without distinction of caste, color, creed or religion, protection of regional languages and cultures, safeguarding the interests of peasants and labour, abolition of untouchability, nationalization of industries, socialism, the establishment of secular India. This resolution he largely drafted and which was ratified in 1931 by the Congress Party, the Karachi session. I was a student of history and I greatly admire Jawaharlal Nehru's sense of history. Apart from being a history maker, he took a deep interest in history and especially in the history of India. And Sunil Kilnani, in his excellent work, The Idea of India, has a lot to say about Jawaharlal Nehru's approach, not just to the idea of India, but to the past and how it connects to the future. So I think we must recognize today the way in which India's great modernizer, Jawaharlal Nehru, sought all his life to coordinate within the form of a modern state a range of values, a variety of values: democracy, religious tolerance, economic development, and cultural pluralism. We must also remember the fact that sometimes Jawaharlal Nehru was virtually alone in fighting for a particular idea or cause. He never gave up. That kind of courage, moral courage, political capability, charisma, all that carried the day, at least to a significant extent. Planned industrialization. Both Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose were very clear. Their ideas were very different from Gandhiji's economic outlook. But they were very clear that the future Indian state should commit itself to establishing what they referred to as key or mother industries. That is, heavy industries essential to build other industries and for India's self-defense. We may have different views about it, but nobody can question the fact that India's future development, economic development and industrialization was built upon this basis, for which Jawaharlal Nehru should get primary credit as an architect. There are many other things you can say about him. His internationalist outlook, his championing of the values of non-alignment from which India has deviated, and of course, Gopal mentions in his biography that Jawaharlal Nehru was critical of Indian biographies. Most Indian biographers just eulogize their subject. Excessive praise for their subject, not critical. So in that spirit, we must also recognize the weaknesses of Jawaharlal Nehru's vision. I personally think he, along with many leaders, did not pay enough attention to the future of some of the freedoms which he was largely instrumental in enshrining as fundamental rights. Too many limitations on free speech and expression, freedom of association and so on. There's no time to dwell on this. Even Dr. Ambedkar shared the same view as Jawaharlal Nehru on this. But today you will say that freedom of speech and expression is not adequately protected by our constitution. We have a very distinguished senior counsel, my old friend, P. Chidambaram, former finance minister of India, former home minister. He may have something to say, perhaps here or elsewhere, on this subject. I don't want to dwell on it. And economic policies also reached a certain dead end later on, but we must not forget the fact that he laid the basis for India's future economic development. No account of Jawaharlal Nehru can be complete, and I just want to commend my friend Mr. Gopalna for undertaking this work, this strenuous work lasting several years, which he spent personal resources, spent a lot of time, a lot of intelligence in figuring out what the photograph meant, when it was taken and so on, getting the rights properly, so on. So it is a magnificent work, and I hope this book will be widely bought and disseminated, and young people will read it. Thank you for this opportunity.